Good morning, everyone. If I could have everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. The flag's up over here. I Well, we were supposed to have Securitas here at 10 o'clock. He's just a hair late. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold off for just a second. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our presenter today. It is Chris Grant from Ready Hub, and he's going to do the presentation for us. He's going to stop in the middle because I also have the police department coming and Securitas will be coming. So he's going to give a little bit of a presentation and then we'll go ahead and start the whole thing. Chris? Oh, and please, could I have everyone silence their cell phones? So this is Chris Grant.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Michelle. It's a pleasure to be here today. I know that there have been references to this being a training. This is not a training today. This is just a conversation. Hopefully, much of what's going to be covered today is going to be a refresher for you. We've all learned throughout our lives how to use a fire extinguisher or how not to use a fire extinguisher and what to do and what not to do. So hopefully today what we'll be doing is touching on some things that you're already aware of, but that it's always good to have a refresher on. So as Michelle mentioned, okay. There we go. My name is Chris Grant, and I'm an emergency management professional. I've been doing this for over 30 years. 29 of those have been with gray hair. It's amazing what working in emergency management will do for you. I'm a Cal OES, for those of you that know the California Office of Emergency Services. I'm also an outreach instructor for Cal OES, an American Red Cross First Aid instructor, and a FEMA CERT instructor. Is there anyone here who's ever participated on the Sun Lake CERT team or thought about participating on the Sun Lake CERT team? No? Who knows what the CERT team is? Okay, we have one person. It's your Community Emergency Response Team. And your team has had some struggles, as many CERT teams have had over the years as a result of COVID. The ranks have dropped down. You've gone from having dozens and dozens of people who are trained to use fire extinguishers, first aid, CPR, and now more than ever, with many of them having stepped away from that role for one reason or another, it just makes it that much more important that we all have a basic understanding for ourselves of what it is we need to do when there's a fire. So I'd like to thank Cal OES and the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. Those are two organizations. The Autism Society of California also helped develop this. We've watered it down a little bit here, but initially this training is geared specifically to individuals that have access and functional needs. So there'll be some great guidance in here, and hopefully you guys will learn something today. So what we're going to cover, we're going to talk about the fire triangle, we're going to talk about the types of fires, some basics on home smoke alarms, and EDITH, exit drills in the home. We'll talk about portable fire extinguishers and how to safely use portable fire extinguishers, and then confinement and creative resources. If we don't have a fire extinguisher at our disposal, what are some other methods we can utilize to suppress fire? So the first thing, the fire triangle. Can anyone here tell me what three elements must be present in order for a fire to burn?
Air, oxygen.
Oxygen, heat, fuel. There has to be something to burn, right? So heat, That's what's required to elevate the temperature of the material to its ignition point. Our fuel, obviously, those are the things, solid, liquid, or gas, that will actually burn. And then oxygen. So most fires will burn vigorously in an atmosphere of at least 20% oxygen. Something we've all learned early on in our age, right? That if there's a fire, what do we do when we go out the door? We close the door. And what would that be? Is that just good housekeeping? Or is there something behind that action? There is. We're minimizing the amount of oxygen, because one of the important things to know, while these three elements are required for a fire to burn, if any one of these elements is missing, the fire will ultimately extinguish itself. So when we throw water on a fire, what is it we are trying to reduce? The heat. Okay, right? If we're hot, we're going to cool ourselves down. If we throw a blanket over a fire, what are we taking away from the fire? The oxygen, exactly. Now, if there was a trash can that was on fire and I kicked that trash can over and tried to separate as much as I could, what am I doing? I'm taking away the fuel that could continue to burn. Okay, so if any one of these elements are taken away, a fire will ultimately extinguish. Sorry, it's a little difficult. I usually don't have to use a microphone, so it's too bad it's not two beers in each hand, but I'll deal with a microphone and a clicker. Okay, so the types of fires. We know there are many different types of fires. There's a fire that can occur in our kitchen. Our vehicle could catch on fire. There could be brush in our backyards or in surrounding areas that catch on fire. Different types of fuels, different types of environments. So Class A is probably the most common fire that any of us have come across. Trash can burning, wood, rubber, plastics, things of that nature. Our Class B are our flammable liquids: oil, gasoline, lighter fluid, kerosene. And our Class C is our energized electrical equipment. When electricity is turned off, a fire becomes a Class A fire. So it's important to understand that, is that if your breaker box on the side of your home was on fire but it was still energized, what class of fire is it? But if the power was to get cut off or went off by itself, what's burning? It's really just wood and other elements, right? Metal. So when that fire is de-energized, absolutely you can use any kind of fire extinguisher on it. But if you're fighting an electrical fire, there will be a specific class and type of fire extinguisher that we would use for that fire. And we'll touch on the different types of fire extinguishers shortly, but I'll give you a preview, is that the types of fire extinguishers are all going to match up to the types of fires. Okay, now some of them do cross over, but ultimately you'll know which type of fire extinguisher you would use for each type of fire by the time we're done today. Class D, combustible metals, aluminum, magnesium, and titanium. So this shouldn't be too hard even if you just throw a random guess out. What would we not want to put a metal fire out with? Exactly, water, because these are elements that react when water hits them. So it's important, again, to know that you may not necessarily just want to pull out your fire hose to extinguish a fire, depending on what's burning. A lot of the Class D type fires you see in recycling yards, things of that nature. And I can guarantee you, you will never see them attempt to put out one of those fires with water, because what's happening is when that water hits that metal and you have that chemical reaction, it's releasing potentially hazardous or toxic materials into the air. And then our Class K, how many cooks do we have here? How many of you like to cook and cook frequently? Okay, keep those hands up for a minute. Okay, now, keep your hand up if you have a Class K fire extinguisher in your kitchen. So we had about 10 people raise their hands that cook, and we had 2 people raise their hands that, or 4 people, I'm sorry, that have the correct fire extinguisher in your kitchen. Class K, easy to remember, right? Where does the Class K go? In your kitchen. Okay, it's specifically for grease fires and things of that nature, where an ABC extinguisher that would put out A, B, and C class fires would not ultimately be the optimum fire extinguisher to use if we had a fire in our kitchen. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, Chris, I already have a big fire extinguisher hanging in the house. Why would I want to hang a big one in the kitchen? Class K fire extinguishers, in often cases, they're no bigger than this microphone. It's just a small container that'll give you what you need for probably most fire incidents that you would experience in your kitchen. Any questions about the types of fires? Yes, ma'am.
Our Alumawood patio covers, how do you treat those if there's a fire? Because you said you can't use you can't use water to put those out. And then also on the kitchen fires, will baking soda powder put out an oil, say with olive oil or something like that?
So I'll answer the second part. Hang on, I'd just like clarification on the first part. You said you have outside patio?
An Alumawood patio cover, it's attached to the house.
And there's aluminum also?
Well, it's Alumawood, I'm assuming.
Oh, you're talking, it's completely wood, but it's treated wood?
All I know is it's Alumawood, so I can't tell you
Oh,
the specifics.
Alumawood, so it's a processed wood. Okay, right. So chances are that a standard ABC fire extinguisher will work on that. Treated woods, you know, if there is some metal, you know, hinges, things of that nature, that's not going to be a major concern. If the majority of what you're trying to put out is wood, whether it's treated or not, chances are that your standard ABC fire extinguisher, which is the most common extinguisher, it's what most of us probably have in our homes or at our workplaces.
Alumawood is aluminum looking like wood. It's made of aluminum.
Okay, so it's aluminum. Okay, so what do we know about aluminum versus wood? There's probably a very low chance that that aluminum will catch on fire. So it'll be the things surrounding that Alumawood, and thank you for that clarification. So again, you're probably not going to be in a situation where that aluminum is actually on fire. You're going to get away with utilizing your standard ABC fire extinguisher. And then I congratulate you. Your second part of that, it was a question, but it was actually the answer. Absolutely, baking soda. Baking soda is one of those creative confinement mechanisms that we can use to basically put out a fire. Yes, sir.
Yes. Good morning. Lamar Hoke, Jr., and speaking, and my wife, Josette Hoke. What kind of fire extinguisher is this? She purchased it for this.
Well, I'm really glad to see that you brought that, and we're seeking clarification today.
Right.
So, who's got good eyes here? I need somebody with good eyes that can read the small print. So come up here, and we're going to help Lamar understand what his fire extinguisher is. What were the first 3 classes we covered today? ABC. There you go, Lamar. You have an ABC fire extinguisher.
All right, so does that mean that it's all-purpose, or it can deal with the various elements like you were saying here?
So, right there, you see those 3 blocks?
Yeah, I got you.
Let's go back just a second. See, they match up. Class A, Class B,
B and C, I see.
Class C for your electrical energized.
All right, well,
All
thank
right?
you very much.
I'm happy to provide that clarification for you, and thanks again for bringing that. You know, this is what today is about. This isn't a training. This is an opportunity for you to clarify, to just better understand. Is guidance that you've received previously, is it has it modified? Has it been changed? But again, to have a fire extinguisher is one thing. To know what that fire extinguisher is capable of is another. And so thank you, Lamar, for bringing that. I hope it's a lesson for everybody else to understand that when you're picking out your fire extinguisher, make sure to ask the gentleman or the young lady at Home Depot, is this an ABC extinguisher? Is this a Class K for kitchen and grease fires? Okay? Okay, so before we move on to smoke alarms, any more questions? Okay. I'm going to watch a short video here. How many of you have checked your fire extinguishers in the last year?
The plant facility where I used to work would come out once a year with the fire department out in the yard, and he'd actually put the pan, this demonstration on. And he'd have each person come up and demonstrate. And the people said, wow, I know how to put it. But the thing he says, when you energize those things, keep in mind they're energized. They will move on you. So if you've never played with one, you've never had an opportunity to use one, hopefully, you got to be prepared, because some people, when they get energized, get shocked, and they drop the darn thing and run. So, yeah, I did my fire alarms. In fact, my son just found out it was hardwired.
Could I just make a comment? If you want to talk, please wait till we bring the microphone for you, because remember, this is on Channel 97. Thank you.
So, great point. The fire extinguishers that probably most of us, at least those of us who are gray, grew up with, are not the fire extinguishers of today. How many of you caught in that video the fact that there are fire extinguishers that you don't have to take your broom and push the button? You can check it through the remote control on your TV. Yes, there are Wi-Fi. How many of you have devices that connect to Bluetooth, either in your vehicle or in your home? Fire extinguishers today are no different. They can connect through a wireless connection and therefore be able to be managed through a mobile phone, through your remote control on your television. It's always been that curse that we've had, that we've been told, you know, get your fire extinguishers up and test them once a year. But the bottom line is, and we'll talk about this later on how quickly a fire doubles in size, every minute counts. Okay, so take that one day a year. Now, what I will tell you is don't do it on your wife's birthday and tell her that I love you so much that I want to do all the fire extinguishers today for your birthday. Doesn't work out too well. But pick that day. Pick that day, a day when people are going to be there. I actually modified from my wife's birthday to Thanksgiving. I still got quite a bit of pushback, but guess what? I had a captive audience in my home. And if ever there was a time to instill in my family the importance and the ease of checking fire extinguishers, it's on that day. And so the fire extinguishers, again, they are our first mechanism in staying safe. 99% of us in here won't fight a fire when a fire occurs.
Chris, I'm sorry. You mean smoke alarms, correct?
Smoke alarms, I'm sorry. Smoke alarms. And so the importance of those smoke alarms and that alert to get us out and notify us is of the utmost importance. Now, there are fire extinguishers that are specifically for the access and functional needs community now. Audible alarms for visually impaired people that pause with a small window of silence in between each successive cycle so that instructions can be provided in between the alarm. Smoke alarms with a vibrating pad or flashing light are becoming more and more common, especially in communities like Sun Lakes, where those of us that don't have the hearing or the sight that we used to have, it gives us that ability. My phone, my wife asked me, she's like, why do you always have the vibrate on your phone as well as the ringer? Well, because my mind puts the ringer out of, reach, but I feel that vibrating on the change on my, on my side table. So for those of us that are having trouble with sight, for those of us that are having audio problems, there are specific smoke alarms and detectors and CO2 detectors that can be more geared towards serving us as opposed to the old traditional fire extinguisher, smoke detector that we're used to. Outside, strobe lights outside the homes. I actually drove around a little bit a few weeks ago and throughout Sun Lakes, and I was looking to see if anybody had installed one of those. I did not see one that was obvious, but there are smoke detectors that you can put on the outside of your home that will notify people outside that there is a fire. It's just simply a strobe light that goes off, and whether it's a fire or other incident, if that alarm is triggered, it's letting folks on the outside know that the people on the inside need assistance as well. I think we did have a question somewhere. Did I see a hand going up? So smoke alarm placement. Quite a few of you are obviously quite versed on smoke detectors. So the old rule of thumb, what was it? Where did we need to put smoke detectors? Okay, I heard in the bedrooms. Not in the bedrooms, in the hallway leading to the bedrooms. Okay, so we won't spend too much time on this. This is pretty rudimentary stuff here. We know we need to have them in the hallways. They do show the smoke alarms in the bedrooms here. That's the overkill. If you can't either afford or you just choose not to make the investment in multiple smoke detectors, then at least have them in your hallways. The kitchen, obviously, we don't want the smoke detector right in the kitchen because what are we going to get a lot of? Smoke. False alarms, exactly. So we want to have them positioned far enough away that, they're not going to continually be giving you false triggers. And then I don't believe there are any basements in Sun Lakes. Is that correct? Okay, so that's not something we have to worry about. But, again, these things are there. We don't think about them. I can't tell you before going to families' homes how frustrated I was because it's like, oh, your smoke detector's chirping, and I started carrying extra batteries around for people because, these are people I care and love about, and much like with a fire extinguisher, having the fire extinguisher is one thing. That's not your sense of security. Your sense of security is knowing what you can do with that fire extinguisher, what you can't do with that fire extinguisher. And it's the same with the smoke detectors and CO2 detectors. Just having them is not enough. Maintain them. It's not that hard to once a year or twice a year take your broom, poke the thing, and see. Does the battery need to be replaced? As a rule of thumb, are most of the smoke detectors here in homes hardwired, or are they battery operated? So hardwired, right. So again, some people may think, well, it's hardwired, it's constantly got power. But how many times do we experience public safety power shutoffs and just power outages? Well, guess what? All that time, your battery's running. I went to go pull my clicker out today. I haven't done a physical training since COVID, and it turns out that my batteries had died. And I didn't think about that because it's been turned off and the battery should have been there, but the reality of it is you can't just assume that your battery backup's going to be there. So during these times when we think, oh, we lost power for a couple hours and it's happened 4 times over the summer, we want to make sure that we've checked those fire extinguishers, and especially this time of year, okay? Because we're in fire season, right? California fire season. Can anybody tell me when our California fire season is now?
January to January.
Thank you. We used to, you know, have a few months where we thought, okay, it's fire season, but as we all know, now is fire season. We just had some great rains. It's thankful, much appreciated, and I loved how green everything was. And within weeks, what are we looking at? Just kindling, waiting to catch on fire. And being that this community abuts, you know, beautiful landscape, but one that is ultimately one of the greatest fire hazards we can have. Yes.
Chris?
Yes, sir.
On your diagram, it doesn't show a smoke alarm up in the attic. All these homes have, all their heating systems are in the attic. So I put one in the attic.
Right. And absolutely.
Because it's a hot piece of machinery.
Sure. Sure, and again, depending on what you have in your attic. Do you have a walk-in attic where you can walk around and you have things stored up there? What did we talk about earlier that we need? Fuel. Are there things up there that can catch on fire? You know, one of the things to remember is, and we don't cover it here, but having the grates over the entrances to your attic. Because fire, it can travel. Okay, and so a fire that's 2 miles up the hill there, those embers, they float and they travel. So there is every possibility that they could end up being sucked up into your attic and just sitting there and smoldering, and you know, having that alarm there is giving you that ability to know that I've got problems upstairs, you know. And again, if it's an interconnected device, it's going to set off all of the other devices as well. So that's actually great, over and above what most people would do, but a very smart decision on your part to make sure that, you know, in the event that, you know, there is a fire in your attic, or if, I don't know if it's a CO2, a combination, or just a smoke detector, but any detector anywhere in your home, there is no overkill. Yes, ma'am, we have a question back there. 1 second.
Hang on, just 1 second. Let me give you the mic.
Okay, I had always heard that you were supposed to have separate CO2 detector and a smoke alarm, like one goes lower, the CO2, but the smoke alarm goes higher, that you shouldn't have a combo.
Right, so that is certainly one train of thought that people have, but as I mentioned earlier, the technology and advancements in detection devices is nowhere near what it was 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years ago. And again, it could depend on what the layout of your home is. Yes, absolutely. If you buy a smoke detector separately and you buy a CO2 detector separately, chances are they're going to instruct you to set them at different levels. But don't just assume that, you know, because someone said or you heard that it's not good to have a combined smoke detector. Look at your specific property. You have property management specialists right here that can serve you, that service these buildings every day. Don't be afraid to reach out to them and ask them for guidance based on the materials that were used when building these homes and the infrastructure that's already there. If you are looking at a hardwire system, you may be limited on where you can hardwire devices, but it doesn't mean that you can't get a battery-operated device and supplement the hardwired system. Okay, hang on one second. Somebody just
Okay,
jump.
I'm gonna go. All right. Question. Many of the homes here in Sun Lakes have higher ceilings. Why is it that the smoke detector must be on the high ceiling? Why can't you put it lower and still get the smoke that may be coming up? Because none of us can get on a ladder and change the battery on a smoke detector that's on a, 9-foot, 10-foot ceiling.
Right. So it's not why can't we do that? So let's stop and think about that scenario. We have a very high ceiling here. Okay? I can have a smoke detector on the side of the wall, or I could have the smoke detector on top of the ceiling. If we're talking 20, 25 feet, let's say, inside that room, if the fire is over here and the smoke is coming up, is the detector on this wall necessarily going to pick up that smoke? No, it's not. But what's going to happen when smoke hits that ceiling? It starts spreading out. So inevitably, that detector will pick up that smoke. But if that smoke is not set in an area where it can unequivocally pick up that smoke and detect that smoke, that may not be the best location for that. And you bring up a very valid point. I mean, myself, I don't want to be climbing up a ladder trying to get to a 26-foot ceiling. So you have to look at what are the options for you. Do you have a neighbor who can facilitate that for you? Are you comfortable just putting multiple smoke detectors maybe at the lower level to offset having to have a smoke detector up higher? So it's your creativity. Sometimes it's your budget. What do I have available to me to invest in the smoke detectors? But historically, the reason that smoke detector has to be at the highest point, because that's where the smoke is going to ultimately collect and trigger that alarm. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
On your chart, you showed the 3 different types of detectors. The one for the hearing impaired, you said you had to get it from a fireman or contact your fireman.
Oh.
Can you get them anywhere?
Yeah, no, ma'am. Just do a Google search. Audible smoke detectors, smoke detectors for visually impaired. Chances are you could probably order it off Home Depot. It'll come from a vendor. It may not necessarily be in stock. But there's no shortage of electrical wholesalers, other places where you can find these devices. Now, mind you, they're not going to be your cheap little 2-pack from Home Depot. They're probably going to be a substantial investment. But again, as technology gets better and it drives the prices down, these types of specialized detectors for individuals with access and functional needs are certainly much more realistic than they were 5 or 10 years ago.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm not quite clear on location of the smoke detector versus the CO2. Which one's higher? How far apart should they be?
So there is no universal answer to that.
I just meant, is there just in general?
Yeah, no, there's not, because again, your kitchen layout is different than your neighbor's kitchen layout. Okay, maybe they have a hood and a vent over their cooking, their stove. Maybe you don't. So it really comes down to, when you bring that device home, it's going to give you general, okay, put this at 8 feet, put your smoke detector at no more than 10 feet high. Where you actually position those is going to depend on where you're standing and where, you know, you anticipate smoke will come, where CO2 will come, where's your water heater located, you know. That's something that a lot of folks don't take into consideration, is making sure that there's a device by your water heater.
And in the hallway, any recommendation?
Again, it depends on the layout, and this is where, you know, smoke detectors and CO2 detectors, don't make them an individual household activity. Talk with your neighbors, because I can guarantee you, these two gentlemen sitting right here, they have done this and they've learned some lessons. So reach out to folks that understand your community and the layout and maybe the floor plans and things of that nature. Don't assume that it's just something that I have to take on as my own personal responsibility. Okay. Okay, any more questions? We'll move on.
Chris?
Okay, yes.
Could we hold for just a minute? I have Mike Romero from Securitas.
Sure.
So just we'll do a little break there.
We're going to go ahead and take a break on this, and Securitas is going to come up and tell you about how secure you are.
Good morning, folks. Thanks for having me here today. I hope everybody's having a good day. I'll be real brief. Just wanted to let everybody know the summer season coming along, we are going to be pretty busy. We're going to be enforcing a lot of rules and regulations inside the community. One of the ones that I've been encountering a lot is just making sure that your guests are aware of what the pool hours are, what you can and cannot do in the pool. So please talk to your guests. We would love to have your guests come and enjoy the facilities as long as they're obliging by the rules and regulations. Residents are reliable for your guests and any family members that are here to attend. But we want to make sure everybody's having a good time, that everybody is safe, and they're doing what they have to do when it comes to regulations. If you do see anybody not complying with rules and regulations, give us a call. We'll head out there as soon as possible, and we'll try to enforce those rules and regulations. Concerns that we've been noticing in the front gate lately are just a lot of pedestrians coming in through the point of entries and exits where vehicles are coming through. Please use the pedestrian gates, folks, or advise your residents, if you are district delegates, to use your pedestrian gates at all times. It is a safety concern. We've almost observed a few residents get clipped by vehicles that weren't paying attention, and that becomes a huge issue. Last thing we want to see is somebody get potentially, injured and taken out to the hospital because they weren't paying attention. So for your safety, please make sure you inform everybody to use the pedestrian gates at all time, at all points of entries inside the community. At the main gate as well, we ask that residents please be patient when they're coming through the resident lane. It is an automated gate. Officers are not controlling those gates unless it's an emergency. So stop at the line, wait your 2 seconds, and wait for the gate arm to come back down so that way you can continue to go through. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck there. That gate arm will not go up, and we've had some residents honk at our officers, and they're attending guests at the window at the same time. So we'll get you through, but just understand that please be patient with my team as well. The rules and regulations when it comes to the dogs being enforced, it's been going pretty well. We've seen a lot of residents actually complying with that rule and regulation. We haven't been issuing any citations. It is for your safety of your pet. Any pet owners here, I'm sure you guys love your pets as much as I love my pet. Please secure your dog. We have a lot of issues here. We've had an incident actually where somebody's pet got run over, which he was attached to a leash as well. And it was a fatal incident, unfortunately. So just be careful, keep your pet secured at all time. Speed also is a concern in the community, as you're aware. We're enforcing speed regulations by just advising residents that are coming through and guests and giving them as much as education as possible to let them know to please be patient when it comes to driving inside the community. Speed limit can be 20 to 25, 15 over at the Fairview Villas and any of the condominium areas as well. Hopefully you guys understand that traffic regulations are something that my security team is going to be enforcing, but we want everybody safe in the community as much as possible. So please talk to your guests. And if you have any questions or concerns regarding those regulations, you can reach out to me or Lieutenant Roman when it comes to those issues. We've seen a number of homeless decrease around the community. To my understanding, we haven't received any reports from Banning PD or residents about homeless encampments or individuals around the community. We're doing our patrol as much as possible. We're continuing to push our due diligence in preventing people from coming into the community that are not welcome. And the ones that we do encounter, we automatically remove them from the community. We try to give them the opportunity to not do that anymore, because the second approach would be having them arrested, and it'll become an inconvenience for them. So we are enforcing the arrest for any trespassers that try to come through the community. Other than that, that's much on my report. Do I have any questions from anybody? Yes, ma'am.
Now that Securitas has been purchased by Stanley, can you tell us any changes that are in the works and how that any of those changes will affect us?
Nothing has been passed down to my knowledge when it comes to Securitas purchasing Stanley. To my knowledge, it's business as usual. Any changes that come from Securitas, they'll let me, or we'll let the client, which is you guys, know in terms of those changes happening. But for now, everything is the same as it has been for the last couple of years. Any other questions? All right. Thank you for your time, folks. I appreciate it.
While we have this 5-minute break waiting to reboot, if anyone has any questions or concerns for the master board, I'll attempt to answer them for you. Any questions? Well, that means we're doing a great job. Well, we're almost doing a great job.
I just read in my district newsletter that at night we only have one patrol doing both sides. I think that's ridiculous.
I agree with you. So what we're doing is that Banning Police Department has agreed to have some of their officers patrol for us in our community in the evening time. I just had a meeting with Captain Jeff last week, and he indicated that they're going to begin doing that for us.
That would be good.
Without any extra cost.
Yeah, because I don't remember ever having that only one person running around.
Yeah, it's been that way for about a year now.
Thank you.
But we realize it's an issue, and we're addressing it, as best we can.
Will that start right away?
Yes, it should probably begin in July.
Now, the difference between
they just advise us.
The difference between Securitas saying you did something wrong and the police department saying you did something wrong could be a ticket. Are they going to start doing that?
They'll be doing it in the evening times. They're not out here to look for speeders or stop sign violators. But basically, it's more to protect your home from someone trying to take something from your backyard or enter your home. So it's good having the police around, to offer those services. Yes.
Apparently, at present, we need to be aware of our security when we're outside of Sun Lakes. I was with a friend about 3 weeks ago, and we'd stopped at Marshall's late in the afternoon, and my friend went to purchase something. Her wallet was not in her handbag. She's a pretty sharp person, and she normally would have been aware of some problem going on, but this lady, who was somewhat well-dressed, distracted her by asking her to reach for something up on a shelf. Actually, twice. She said, no, move over there. And then when my friend went to pay, she had no wallet. Fortunately, she had security on her iPhone, which was not taken. And half hour or so later, she got an alert that someone tried to charge $2,900 with 3 different credit cards over at Best Buy. So we went over there, and Best Buy had the woman on camera, but there was also a gentleman with her. We don't know if he was there at Marshall's when that happened or not, but we did file a police report because of because of the amount, and the officer came. We had a good conversation with him. He said we were somewhat safe in Sun Lakes because I told him I lived there. She did not. But apparently, I don't know, I was wondering how much you've heard about activity like this going on and how safety conscious we should be when we're out. The policeman did tell us that if something happened in here, we should call them first.
Absolutely. Thanks for that information. It's important to be aware and to be vigilant at all times that usually the people doing that work as a team. You know, one to distract and the other one to steal. We've had instances of people trying to do that here in Sun Lakes, but with our community service notification, I think a lot of people are aware of that. And so be very vigilant when you're not only here, but especially when you're out shopping, you know, because there's a lot of people trying to take advantage, you know, and take from you. So always be on the alert. Being a retired PO, probation officer, I'm always suspicious and making sure that, you know, I'm observing things and people around me, and if you can do that, do the same thing. And it's important to note, as she said, is that contact the police department right away, and not Securitas or a friend. Contact the police department. Thank you. Any other questions?
I can also attest to that. There was something that happened in the Albertsons parking lot, and this well-dressed lady came over to a lady that was in the car and told her to roll her window down and to get out of the car, that somebody had hit her. And so she got out of the car, and then some gentleman that was well-dressed went ahead and opened her door and took that out. So community awareness, if you look at the article I always put in, just make sure of your surroundings. Make sure that someone's not following you to your car. You should be under a light. You should be someplace where don't park way down further. I know I've been doing that lately because I bought a new car and I don't want anybody to hit it, but you need to park. As we age, we're not as quick as we used to be, and people are taking advantage of us. So make sure you read our lifestyles article that we have for community awareness. And the police department also does come in and make some suggestions on how to keep you safe also. So look at all the tips and make sure that you're abiding by those things. I do know that there was something that happened here in Sun Lakes, that somebody was at the front door while somebody went to their back door, tried to get in. So again, those type of things, you need to make sure that you actually call the police department. Do not call Securitas. Securitas does not have the authority to arrest. So in this next lifestyles article that we've just published, it does have what Securitas, what their jobs, what they can and what they cannot do. So make sure that you read that article, because there's a lot of things that I didn't even know. I thought they could do some certain things, and they cannot. Remember, they are a community patrol. They are not police officers. So just be cautious of that. Oh, here we go. We're ready.
All right. Apologies. Okay, so moving on. Exit drills in the home. Oh, great video.
This message is brought to you by the U.S. Fire Administration. Have two ways out. When fire strikes, deadly smoke can fill your home within minutes. That's why the USFA wants you to plan and practice home fire drills. Draw a map of each level of your home showing all doors and windows. Discuss the map with everyone who lives with you. Practice your home fire drill at least twice a year. Make sure all doors and windows that lead outside open easily. Push the smoke alarm button to start the drill. Try feeling your way in the dark or with your eyes closed. Have at least two ways out of every room. If your first way out is blocked by fire or smoke, you can use your second way out. If there is smoke, get low and go. Crawl quickly under the smoke to your nearest exit. Close doors behind you and gather at a pre-planned outside meeting place where first responders can see you. Call 911. Remember, get out and stay out. Never go back inside for people, pets, or things. Learn more at www.usfa.fema.gov.
So again, nothing new. We've all learned, get low, get out as quick as you can. But what I would like to challenge all of you to do is the next time you think about your exit drills in the home, make it a game. Invite family and friends, neighbors over. And as they said, try an exercise where all the lights are turned off. And who can get out? Who has difficulty getting out? Maybe you have some contests and someone can win a flashlight, someone can win water, someone can win a blanket to keep you warm once you've evacuated the home. These are very mundane, and you know, I know watching this you're probably thinking, oh, you know, I'm not going to get motivated to do an exit drill in my home. We already know how to get in and out. But again, I'll challenge you, block the front door and then do your drill. Force yourself to have to use the routes that we anticipate will be available but may not be available during the fire. So exit drills in the home, again, fires are going to happen at night. We're going to be startled. We're not going to be about ourselves for a few seconds or a few minutes once we realize what we're facing. So it's important that we practice at night when it might be dark. Don't just do it in the middle of the day during brunch, you know, because the chances are that fire will occur at night while we're sleeping. We're going to have 1 to 2 minutes to get out of our home when that fire starts. And I have a question for all of you in here. Can anyone tell me, how long does it take for a fire to double in size? Every 60 seconds, that fire will be twice as big as it was before. So you can imagine 60 seconds, another 60 seconds, within 3 minutes, what you thought was a controllable fire that you attempted to address with your fire extinguisher, time's going to go by like that, and before you know it, you're dealing with a fire that is way above your capacity to fight. I have a question back here.
So many of us have lofts, and if family's there or if a person who just lives here is up there, what's the best plan?
Plan ahead is the best plan. Look, it's just like someone with an access and functional need. If I were wheelchair bound and I was a family member of anybody here and I was coming to stay with you, I would make sure, or the best I could, to make sure that put me on the first floor. Don't put me upstairs. Okay, if I do have to be upstairs, whether I have a wheelchair or other mobility disability, practice what you're going to do, getting that person out of there. And it's not just a matter of a fire. It could be an earthquake. It can be an explosion. It can be flooding and high winds. It's knowing beforehand. And I'm sure plenty of you in here, you have friends and family come visit throughout the year, different occasions, right? Are they as familiar with the layout and the rearranging you've done since the last time they were there? No, they're not. And it seems odd that, well, why would I give people a safety orientation when I'm having them come over 4th of July or for Halloween or for a birthday? Because you won't get a chance to do it if that incident happens. So it's better to take a few minutes beforehand. If you've made some adjustments and you've accommodated a family member or a friend in the past and that accommodation is no longer available, then let's take a few minutes and just talk. Hey, Bob, if we need to get out of here, this is the route that, you know, we're prepared to take you out of. Is this a comfortable route for you? So planning ahead, absolutely. You're going to have people in strange positions and peculiar places. There's nothing wrong with that. Just make sure that they know and you know how they intend on getting out and what you can do to support them.
Chris, I think his question really was about lofts. A lot of our homes have lofts, right, and some we do have second stories. Okay. I think he's asking what's the best way to have a member of the family get out if you're
Okay.
downstairs and they have to get out.
Okay, so that comes into a potential future investment that you would have to make. They have collapsible ladders
That's what I was gonna
that
say.
can attach to second-story windows. They don't have to be there all the time. They're compact. They can sit by a window, adjacent to a window, and it's pretty easy once you know what you're doing. And when I say once you know what you're doing, once you've practiced and practiced and practiced to where it becomes second nature, that you know what kind of lock is on that window, what's below. How far is that ladder going to come down? But ultimately, if the fire department comes and they've got people in the loft, what are they doing? They're putting a ladder up to the window. So you can look at opportunities, and there are people that have gotten creative. We see it on hero videos all the time on YouTube where someone tied some sheets together and shimmied their way down. And that's certainly an option. If you want to go a cheaper or more cost-efficient route, consider a rope. But are the people that you're expecting to evacuate from that area, are they going to have the capacity to climb down a rope? Are they even going to have the capacity to climb down a professionally built ladder that hangs securely from the window? It's really what is going to work for you. So yes, getting folks out, just like the fire department, where are they going to go? They're going to go up with their ladder. So the only thing that you could do before the fire gets there, or fire department gets there, is have a ladder that's coming down, or some other, what we call an egress, a way out.
I was just going to add the same thing. I don't have a loft and I don't have a second story, but the first assumption I would make is my stairs are gone. And I need to get out of that loft, that second story, out the window somehow. And I need to practice that, because like you say, I may say, yeah, now, but now I'm scared of the fire, and it's now 10 feet down. I may not have the willpower to get out that window. I need to practice that. But your first assumption is you got to take the stairs automatically out of your way, because they're not going to be there.
Right, and so let me ask this question. Are any of you adjacent to neighbors, or are you a neighbor that if you were the neighbor that saw the house on fire wouldn't hesitate to take your ladder and try to climb up to that window?
Correct, yep.
Absolutely. Well, guess what? You don't want the first time you do that to be the first time you do that. So just practice. I mean, we've all done it, putting up Christmas lights. It's not that difficult. It's pretty mundane. We get our ladder up. We make sure it's secure. But when that chemistry in our body changes and that fight or flight and that adrenaline is going, even the most well-trained people are going to have confusion. But it's your training that overcomes those obstacles. And so absolutely, I'm sure there's no shortage of ladders within 5 homes adjacent to yours. You know, talk to these folks. You know, you've got folks that are already raising their hand saying, absolutely, I'd be that individual that would put my ladder up. But it's one thing to do that and then realize, like, well, wait a minute, getting up to the window's one thing, but how do I help that person safely get out of that window? Do they have durable medical equipment that needs to come with them? Are they, you know, adamant about bringing their cat or, their comfort animal? So it's not just practicing, oh yeah, no problem, we've got 4 neighbors that can get a ladder up to that window. Actually practice it. And it seems scary that, well, why would I practice climbing out of a window down my neighbor's ladder when I don't have to? Because that's going to make it safer for you when you actually have to do it and your wits aren't about you, that chemistry in your brain is telling you don't go out that window. And there are many people that refuse to come out of windows and unfortunately perish in fires because they just simply, it wasn't that they had a fear of it, they just hadn't practiced it and realized, like, okay, I've done this 2 or 3 times now, and we've modified our practice drill each time to make sure that whether it's an adjustment for the rescuer or the rescuee, that we both know what it is we're expecting from each other. Yes, ma'am.
I had a question. If you go back to the last slide, it said don't go back in for people and pets?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, because how quickly does a fire double in size? every 60 seconds. Now, we talk about the fire. What is it that causes most people to perish in a fire? Thank you. It's not the flames. It's the smoke. So you can become overwhelmed in an immensely quick period of time. And yes, golly, we want to go back. And there are no shortage of stories of heroes that do go back into a home and save a child or save a loved one or saved a pet. But they're the exception to the rule. There are many more people who perish in fires because they don't understand that basic concept. Now, you talk about, well, don't go back in. Now, if you're trained and you have mechanisms or you've got the understanding of, okay, I know at least I shouldn't go back in here, that's what conventional wisdom tells me, but I know from my training that if I wet my shirt and I hold it over my mouth and I crawl low, absolutely, I could potentially get in there and save another life, whether it's an animal or whether it's a human being. But again, the only way I know that I have that level of confidence to go back in is that I know what my limitations are. And I understand that, well, I don't see the flames. It's not the flames that are going to kill me. It's going to be what I breathe in for the next 15 seconds, and now I'm unconscious. Okay, so yes, the general rule of thumb is we don't go back in. But again, our chemistry's going and I can see my cat or I can hear my dog. It's hard for you to rationalize what you're learning here today. Well, I know I'm not supposed to go back in, but I can't just do nothing. Okay, so it's just decisions we have to make, but how do we get ourselves, how do firemen learn to eliminate that fear of going into a building? They practice it over and over. How do they eliminate the fear of jumping into raging waters to save people? It's not because they're heroes. It's not because they're brave. It's because they are trained. Now, I don't take anything away. They are heroes and brave, but that's not what they rely on when they go into that situation. It's what I understand, and not just, oh, you've got to train, train, train. We train so we can understand what we're capable of and what we're not capable of. I understand my limitations, so I know what I can do, and I know I better find somebody who can do the things that I can't do. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
This might never occur, but if you can't open a window, and most of us have double pane windows and sliding glass doors, is there anything that can break them? I don't know.
So that's a great question. And ironically, we were doing a training a few days ago, and they used a truck. A big Dodge Ram truck, didn't have double-paned windows. It took us about 8 times throwing a brick to finally break that window. And I thought, wow, that's just a vehicle window. And we did. We thought about it. Well, what about in a home where there's double-paned windows is what ultimately can be that tool. Well, it turns out that for those of you that know someone in CERT, they've got this tool. It's a tiny, it looks like a little screwdriver, and it's called a glass breaker. And it's just a sharp tip on the end, and you can either take your hand, smash that against a window, or use something to give it the additional force, grab a regular screwdriver. I don't know specifically, and that's something I wouldn't recommend practicing because you'd be replacing windows. But again, it's nothing that a Google search, have a grandkid, have one of your nieces or nephews do it, is that, you know, what can I use to break double pane window? They'll come back with a few answers for you.
Would Home Depot have it?
Absolutely. Well, not that Home Depot would have the answer, but Home Depot has the ability to say, okay, what's the manufacturer? And they can go look at the manufacturer, and they may be able to look at what is the rating, because that window has a rating. The windows in Florida have higher ratings than the windows in California. Why? Because they're built to withstand, you know. So it's information that you can find out. Going to Home Depot or contacting the manufacturer or a friend that's a builder that can look at the make and model of that window and see what is the rating on it, and is it probably going to be a window that you can throw a brick through or some other heavy piece of furniture. I think we had, did I see a hand over here? No? Okay. So, walking through your home and inspecting, again, exactly that, windows. Well, okay, Chris said, consider that all the primary exits are not accessible. Okay, so now I'm looking at my double-paned windows. But I need to now understand, is that an obstacle? Do I have the ability to lift that window? I mean, we all know some of these windows, they can get pretty big, or, you know, the dust that's constantly blowing, that's, you know, a big culprit in our area when you have a hard time lifting a window. Why is it? Because there's so much grit and sand always blowing in this area that you don't realize that it's built up, and you really have a difficult time getting that window up. So again, walking all areas of your home and understanding, do you have an area, do you or your spouse have a bad habit of when you come back from the grocery store, you tend to always leave things in front of the door leading out to the garage, and, oh, I'll get to those waters and put them away when I can. Well, you've just created an obstacle for yourself. So, you know, always just checking and making sure that what we do in a building like this, I can guarantee you, staff has a policy here. Don't block doorways. Don't, you know, deliveries must be dropped off here. They cannot be left in this area, and that's for a reason, because we don't want to have to address that when there's an actual fire. Drawing a floor plan of your home and marking 2 ways out of each room. Okay, so maybe you're not going to do that, but create that mental vision in your head. And just once a week, once a month, just acknowledge to yourself that, that's right, primary, secondary, I need to get that stuff moved out of here. I have a ladder to go up to the 2nd floor, but guess what? I've got a bunch of stuff blocking the ladder. Okay, just making sure that everything that you would need, because I can't tell you how many times, and as a Red Cross volunteer, when I first started in Red Cross, being on the DAT team, disaster assistance team, at 2 o'clock in the morning and showing up at someone's home, time after time after time, same story. We had this, we had a fire extinguisher, we had that. Well, what happened? Well, we never got around to practicing, and, you know, our smoke detector didn't go off because, you know, we thought it was hardwired, and it turns out that it was actually battery operated. You've got all the things you need. Just take the time before you need them to make sure you understand what they're capable of and what you're capable of. So again, exit drills in the home, I highly encourage, especially when you have friends and family here. Well, Grandma, we came to eat turkey. We didn't come to do exit drills in the home. When do you think it would be most important to have everybody on the same page? When it's just you and your spouse in the home, or when you've got 18 family members? There's the opportunity for much more chaos and confusion. Not that any of you, I don't know, has anyone got 18 people in their family they'd want in their house at one time? But, you know, the reality is our home can get a lot fuller, and we have our plan. What about our guests, those people that we bring in? You bring them into your home to share your food and your love and your joy. Why wouldn't you want to make sure that in the event of a disaster, that we wouldn't want to make sure that they have the same understanding how to protect themselves as we do ourselves? So it's not so much about just practicing for yourself. Anytime, if you regularly host meetings or book readings at your home, and you have people come into your home that aren't there all the time, make sure that they understand the layout of your home. And they, you know, I would come in any one of your homes and assume that if there's a fire, we're going to go out this door, the door I came in, right? That's the natural instinct for most of us, not realizing that a secondary exit may actually be the better route. Or does that secondary route lead me to somewhere where now I can't get out of my backyard? Okay, so these are all things we have to take into consideration when we're planning our exit drills. Okay, so any questions about exit drills in the home? Okay, moving on. So, as I promised you earlier, when we look at portable fire extinguishers, they are going to align up with the types of fires. And I'm sorry, before we go on, I noticed quite a few of you taking photos of the screen. The entire presentation is actually available on the Sun Lakes website under the community awareness tab. So you will be able to print out the entire slide deck and mark it up and make notes as you choose. So we've got our A, B, C class, D class, K class fire extinguishers. Let's see who is paying attention. Which of those three extinguishers up there can be combined into one? Thank you. It's the most common fire extinguisher. It's going to put out arguably every type of fire that we would more than likely come across unless you spend time in a metal yard or you do a lot of cooking in the kitchen. Okay, so let's talk about the components of a fire extinguisher. This is a pretty standard fire extinguisher here. Is there anybody who would like to step up today and be a volunteer? Young lady, what's your name? Linda. Linda. Okay, Linda. So if I can have you turn around and just face the crowd and hold that fire extinguisher.
How do you use it?
You're going to show everybody right now, believe it or not. But I just want to ask you a question. How does that feel in your hand? Does it feel uncomfortable? It's foreign, right? It's not something that you're used to. Yeah. Now that fire extinguisher is only half full. So imagine how challenging it would be if that fire extinguisher was a little bit heavier. Okay? Just picking that fire extinguisher up is going to be a mental challenge right away, right? Is it like, whoa, I know the thing's heavy, and then wait, I have to do 4 things? So let's take a look at what we've got here. So the first thing we have is a pin. Your pin is basically stopping you from having any accidents. And as I shared with the ladies earlier today, and I'm sure Linda won't do it to me, is a student handed me back this fire extinguisher and they didn't put the pin back in. And it just so happened.
The pin right here?
That's the pin, correct.
And that's the hole.
That will stop me from accidentally squeezing this and filling this room with a chemical that would have us all running for the hills. Okay, so you've got your safety pin, then you have your gauge. Can you take a look at that, Linda, and tell me, yeah, put your goggles on. Do you see anything that would give you concern about using this fire extinguisher just looking at the gauge? Okay.
I can't see very well.
Where would we expect that yellow to be? If we have 2 areas, one red and one green, exactly. Is that needle in the green? It's pretty far out of the green, right? So what does that tell us? That this is probably not a fire extinguisher we want to pick up and use, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We go on a green light and we don't go on a red light. That's as simple as it is when reading a gauge. And these will be up here and you're all welcome to come and take a look. But this is the #1 reason people use a fire extinguisher and then wonder why it doesn't work. Because you didn't look at the gauge.
What is the gauge gauge?
The gauge gauges the pressure inside here and the ability for this thing to spray the 8 to 10 feet that it is anticipated to spray. Okay? It could also mean that this thing, one way we check a fire extinguisher is we shake it. Do I feel anything in here? No, I don't. You know why? Because this fire extinguisher is 5 years old, and everything in there, it's just like a big block of chalk. So if I were to go and try to use this fire extinguisher, I'd get nothing. I might get a little spurt. That's it, off the little bit of pressure that's left in here. Okay? So understanding our gauge is of the utmost importance. If that gauge is not in the green, you don't use it. So I see you over here looking at your fire extinguisher. Where is yours? It's in the green, yes, sir, as it should be, okay? So you have a fire extinguisher that, based on the gauge, there is no reason why you shouldn't be able to open that fire extinguisher. Yeah, we're going to get to the pass in just a minute. Pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. No, that's just a release there.
That's the pin.
That's the pin. So no matter how many times I squeeze this, I cannot make this fire extinguisher work. So that's something that you can only experience when you do a real live fire safety training, which I'm going to keep on the staff here, and hopefully we can bring that to you before the end of the summer, where you'll actually have a chance. We have a fire pan we can bring out, and you'll actually have an opportunity to use the fire extinguisher. And so we then have our hose. Our hose, anyone who's worked on vehicles or cars, you know that hoses are not always reliable, right? They get clogged up, they get holes in them, and become otherwise unuseful. So, understanding your equipment, checking the equipment, your hose, your inspection tags. Now, this is a commercial fire extinguisher that gets serviced by a fire company that comes around, much like the fire extinguishers that you may see in the building here. But now, it was Lamar, right? Lamar. Lamar's fire extinguisher will not have an inspection tag because it's just a household unit, which makes it that much more important for us if we're going to rely on that fire extinguisher. Here, I get to look and see, oh, there's a tag, it's in the green, this thing must be good to go. But when we don't have a fire extinguisher folks coming by, no, we don't have that luxury. And so, Lamar, what you're looking at there, if I can just borrow your extinguisher for one moment. What you will find on an unused fire extinguisher is there's actually a breakable seal. So before you even pull the pin out, you have a yellow seal that needs to be broken. But what this yellow seal tells me, looking here, seeing that this is in the green, there is no reason that I wouldn't pick up that fire extinguisher and attempt to use it, because it checks off all the boxes. The gauge is where it's supposed to be. The seal is unbroken.
Chris,
Yes.
could I interrupt you for just 1 second? I know you want to go through this, but I have a sergeant here going to give just as a brief update.
Sure thing.
Make sure your thing is still going.
I'll keep clicking back and forth so it doesn't turn off.
Just play around with it.
Just make it quick, all right?
Thank you, Sergeant.
Hello, Sergeant Robert Howdy, Banning Police Department. I oversee the school resource officers and the homeless liaison officer. So I was just asked to come up here and share a couple statistics with you guys. For the month of May, we had a total of 6 disturbances called in here for Sun Lakes, 3 thefts, and 3 suspicious subjects. Within the last week or so, we have been doing additional extra patrols, so we do have officers come in and try to cover as much as we can, but you know, we are subject to calls, but we do have automatic calls that pop up in our dispatch that are designated for the officers to come through Sun Lakes and do some extra patrol. So we've been trying to do that as much as we can. They are designated at certain times, but again, if we are free, we try to take our trips, make our rounds around here. And as you know, we're working with security. If you guys see anything that doesn't belong, anyone that looks out of place, give us a call or call security, and we'll handle it then. But again, I just wanted to share the statistics for the month of May, and we still have our homeless liaison officer working out there hard, making arrests, and our CBAT, our therapist, she's at the station right now. I was going to bring her with me, but she's entering notes and doing some work. But we also have our clinical therapist through the county that rides out with us once a week. So, are there any questions for me?
How often are you in Sun Lakes, and how long are you in Sun Lakes?
I want to say there's 3 calls that are designated a day that pop up automatically on the screen. I can't tell you how long. It has to be for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but the officers are going through and coming inside and driving around. We are subject to call. I'm sorry?
How often are you in here?
In the
Driving
morning, midday, afternoon, and night.
Is that part of the memorandum of understanding, or is that just
No,
you're
that's
doing-
just something that Banning PD is doing.
Oh, that's cool.
The last time I heard a presentation from the police, it was a little while ago, and the department was quite understaffed. Has that improved the last, say, 6 months?
I think we've been on the same boat since 6 months ago. However, we do have a few people in backgrounds right now, about 4. We are understaffed. We've been understaffed. We're working on getting more people, but it's very difficult to hire a police officer, number 1, to retain them, number 2, because our pay, we're not comparable with a lot of these other agencies that are paying officers a lot more. And lastly, training. Training could take anywhere from 6 months to a year, and it's just not everyone's cut out for it. So those are the things that we're running into, and hiring and retaining good qualified candidates.
Okay, how many policemen are you down from what you...
I want to say about 4 to 5, but we do have about 4 in backgrounds right now. So hopefully within the next few months here, we will be fully staffed, but we also have a few people retiring. We have 3 sergeants that are retirement age that should be pulling the plug here within maybe by the end of year, but there's going to be a turnover as per usual because people put in their time, but we're trying to fill it. But we got to be attractive to qualified candidates, and there's other cities in the surrounding areas that are giving people $30,000, $50,000, $70,000 bonuses, sign-on bonuses to come on board, and we don't have a whole lot to offer. Any other questions? Back there.
If somebody were breaking into my home, approximately how long would it take you to respond? That would give me an indication what I might have to do.
So that's a good question. As she said, if someone is breaking into her home, how long will it take us to respond? So that's all it depends. It depends. I say that because it depends where the officers are throughout the city. They're not all hanging out at the station. Oftentimes, I'm here at 300 South Highland Springs doing extra patrols. I'm in the area. So if a call comes out, it could be a 1 to 2 minute response time. Mind you, we still have to get through the gates, and Sun Lakes in itself is a maze. So we still have to figure out where we're going. But I can't give you a specific time, but if it's a priority call like a burglary, we will get there quickly. And all of our calls are based on priority. A burglary or a suspicious subject trying to break into your house is definitely going to bump up the priority on your call, and we will get there as quickly as possible. Again, if we're coming from the east side of town down by Hargrave because we're all tied up down there on a collision or something like that, we can't help it. It's going to take us, depending on traffic or whatever's going on that day, or Highland Springs, as you know, it's a beast in and of itself. So it's circumstantial. But again, given the priority, we will try to get here as quickly as possible. One more question, yes.
What's my defense during that interim period?
Well,
Defense. I've been told not to have a weapon like a gun or something like that.
I encourage people to own weapons and protect themselves. If you feel that your life is in imminent danger, then you got to do what you got to do to take care of yourself. I encourage everyone, if you can legally possess a weapon, you can practice, go to the range, protect yourself. If you have that legal right to own one, by all means, I encourage it. But again, you got to think about, are they trying to break in, or are they just trying to steal something? Property versus life. Are they just trying to take your property? Because you're going to be judged by a jury, and they're going to be like, well, was she in immediate danger? But if they've got a weapon, they're trying to kick your door in and trying to come and get you, then you can protect yourself. You got to do what you got to do. So hopefully that answers your question.
Well, I've been told not to use a weapon because police officer spoke to us once a number of years ago, and he said it's very easy for someone to take that weapon away from you and to use it.
And that's what I was saying, train with it. If you have one, train with it, be proficient with it. If you're going to use it, I encourage it. If you can legally own one, I tell everyone, get a gun. I highly encourage it because you might be able to react quicker than us getting here. So you have every legal right as a citizen. Yes, sir.
Yeah, they make not stun guns, but they actually make, like Byrna makes a pellet gun that has the like pepper spray, and those are easy to handle. They're very light. It's almost like a BB gun, but they have like stun pellets and all that. And it's if they take that from you, they might shoot you with it. It's going to hurt, but it's not going to kill you. But it's going to hurt them if you shoot them first. And they're good for like 15 to 20 feet. So
and with that, they also have those big mace bear pepper sprays. They have like a handle. They're about this big. I'd carry a couple of those. That's what we carried in the jails and the institutions. You spray somebody, you hit them with it, they're not going to know what hit them. So, I mean, like I said, if your life is in immediate danger, you're going to do whatever it takes for you to protect yourself until we get there. Well, we're going to get there. Call us right away. But if you need to put the phone down and protect yourself just so that you have an open line with 911, then that's what you got to do. But in this day and age, with everything going on in this beautiful state of California, I would highly encourage home protection. So, are there any other questions? No? Thank you guys for your time.
Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Sergeant, I need to ask you. Okay, so
And I don't know,
next
there might
month,
be
we're
a few other
having the
weapons in
panel
your house
of,
that might be effective.
County
No,
supervisor
seriously.
was supposed to come in, and he's going to do the homeless to work program. I need our homeless liaison here.
Okay, Officer Hickson.
Sorry.
Officer Hickson.
3 things in my hand. You spray this in the direction of an intruder, they are going to feel like they got pepper sprayed, mace, bear spray, combination of all of the above, okay? So again, it's not just for fires, it could be a non-lethal weapon that serves your purpose at some point in time. But actually, while we're on this fire extinguisher, so I've just talked about the different components, the pull the pin and the hose. You're going to come across fire extinguishers that don't have those things. So again, become familiar with the type of fire extinguisher that you're comfortable with. Some people feel more comfortable not having to navigate a hose and want to just be able to hold something and squeeze. Okay? So you're not stuck with the old traditional fire extinguisher that has the nozzle and has the hose and has the pin. I'm sorry? Point and shoot. Correct. There'll still be a trigger switch, but that's a lot easier to navigate than trying to remember to pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. Yes, ma'am.
I have in my kitchen, it's an aerosol. What do you think about those? It's like a fire extinguisher.
They're effective. Now, what I will tell you is that their effectiveness is limited to the amount of what you can do. But if you were able to get a hold of a fire, and we heard it earlier about baking soda, you know, a packet of baking soda may be sufficient to put out that fire if you catch it early enough. Again, it just depends on what you're comfortable with. If you know you do cooking and it's pretty spread out and there could be the potential for a bigger fire, then you'd probably want that Class K sitting by your stove or under your sink as opposed to just counting on a box of baking soda.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, if I should replace the ones I have, what do I do to dispose of the current ones? I mean, you can't just throw that in the trash.
Right, so what I recommend to everyone is it's a real waste of money to throw away a fire extinguisher that may still be working, but you know, in our household, every year we take out the old fire extinguishers, we stand in the driveway, and we have the kids practice using the fire extinguisher. And then we just hose it all down, we sweep up. It's not hazardous material that comes out of fire extinguishers, but it's something that we want to limit our exposure to it, of course. And so many of them come out as like a dry, chalky material that you put on your N95 mask, you sweep it up as much as you can, and then we hose the rest down. You'll see during CERT trainings, community emergency response teams, when they're doing the fire pans. They'll use these extinguishers and then just basically hose it down. So rather than just throwing a full fire extinguisher away, I'd say why not use it? Practice with it and then go get your new fire extinguisher, because then, just like an electric box that's turned off and is no longer generating power, it's just metal and wood. Well, it's the same thing. If this is empty, it's empty. It's just metal. Put it in your recycling and, you know, take it to the recycling plant, or just waste management will pick it up.
Okay.
You know, now, one thing I would recommend, though, is potentially looking at groups like this or volunteer groups to say that if you have fire extinguishers that need to be disposed of that may still have some charge, is do a collection and then work with the local fire department to have them, it probably won't be the fire department, but they could put you in touch with a fire extinguisher company in the area that would be more than happy to come and take these and potentially refurbish them and get them back into service, unless they are just household units. But, you know, it's just like with your electronics. You don't just throw your electronics out. So why not have a fire extinguisher day where people can turn in their old fire extinguishers just as they do their old electronics? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about actually using a fire extinguisher. The time has come and we need to actually put it into use. What's our first thing say up here we need to do, bolded? Maintain a safe distance. How do we know what a safe distance is from a fire? If we're putting it, thank you. That's the most obvious answer, is that, you know, Lamar will see it later when he goes home and looks more closely, just as it will say on here. Your fire extinguisher will tell you, start back at 8 feet. So I know that 8 feet is my range. Now, I'm not going to measure 8 feet from where I am from the fire. I'm going to go based on, I'm sorry, your name? John. John, I'm going to go off what John said. You know, have you ever opened the oven and you realize you feel that heat coming and you're like, whoa, I need to back up? It's no different than a fire. Your body will tell you when you're close enough to that fire. You may not be, you may be at 10 feet, you may be at 6 feet. But regardless of what is stated on the fire extinguisher, go off what your body feels comfortable with, because what we don't want to do is be too close and become overwhelmed by the heat and the sensation. Okay? Never turning our back on a fire when backing out. We've all seen it in the movies, right? What does fire do periodically? It lashes out, right? It's not just burning upwards, depending, it hits an air pocket, it hits a different type of material or a chemical. You see sporadic behavior. So, when fighting a fire, if I can get a volunteer again, please. Anyone? Come on, it won't hurt. Okay, Michelle. So now, Michelle, we are going to attempt to put out this podium that's on fire. Now, just so happens that Michelle and I are together, so she doesn't have to put this fire out by herself or attempt to put it out by herself. If you have the luxury of having someone with you, how do we make sure that Michelle doesn't need to turn her back? She's the one putting out the fire. I am a guide. I place my hand on her shoulder. So now let's approach. Okay. Now, so we're at about probably 8 feet right now. Michelle's going to do her thing, but she should never do what? Never turn her back. Well, she doesn't need to, because as she's still fighting the fire, I can look back. I can be the guide, right? Her focus should be on nothing more than suppressing that fire. Okay? Now, if she were by herself and she were to turn around and that fire lashes out at her and the back of her clothes catch on fire, well, now she's in real trouble. Thanks, Michelle. So if you ever find yourself in a position where you are looking to address and try to suppress a fire, be the helper, or if you're not going to be the person taking the extinguisher, you still have a very valuable role to make sure, because you're the eyes and ears for that person. And trust me, if you're standing in front of a fire with a fire extinguisher, you have arguably the most tunnel vision you will ever have in your life, because we all understand the impact that fire can have, and we know that we want to get that fire put out. So, Michelle's done a great job. We were able to suppress this fire. Do we just walk out and leave and say, hey, we did a great job? What's the most important thing that we can do? It's the last bullet point here. Overhaul the fire. What does that mean? We've all been camping, right? What does Smokey the Bear tell us to do? Take your campfire. Okay? When you see after, and I just saw one a couple weeks ago where we're having so many more of those fires on the side of the freeway now in the fields from the homeless population trying to keep warm, okay? So you'll see the fire, and then they're there, and my wife said, I came and picked her up. My wife works here, by the way, in the restaurant, and we were driving home, and she said, well, God, that fire was 2 hours ago. Why are there still fire engines in? I said, well, because they're overhauling the fire. She said, well, what does that mean? She said, they're just walking around. There's just a guy. Looks like there's just water drizzling out, a fireman, and right in front of him there's a guy with a rake. They're just making sure that there's nothing. The worst thing you want to do is think you've put out a fire, go out and tell your neighbors what a great firefighter you are, and then they're like, actually, your house is still burning. Why? Because you didn't make sure the fire was completely out. You know, that's, like I said earlier, kicking over the wastebasket that was on fire and just making sure to stomp everything out, throwing dirt on it, additional water if we have it. So making sure that that fire is out and that it stays out, because there's a high probability that you think you put that fire out, but underneath the couch is still smoldering, or the carpet is still smoldering, and it will reignite at some point. So making sure that we always overhaul that fire and make sure it stays out. Okay? 5-second rule. We look at the fire. If we don't see active flames after putting it out, then we attempt to put it out. We don't want to try to overhaul a fire that's still an active fire. The active overhauling is making sure the fire doesn't reignite. So we don't want to start that overhaul process too close. And as you all are aware of, searching for hidden fire or sparks, you know, it's when we're camping and we have those logs that have been burning all night, but they're not completely burned. They're still burning deep inside. And then there's a method for overhauling a fire. We cool, we soak, and we separate. Okay? We cool it, and what are we taking away when we cool it? The heat from the fire. Remember the fire triangle. Okay? When we soak it, what are we taking away? We're taking away oxygen. And then when we separate the fuel, we're just separating the fuel. So the very things, that triangle that makes a fire, these are the steps to make sure that that triangle doesn't connect. Okay.
A surprising new warning from FEMA prompted World News to create a test. There are 1,000 house fires in this country every day. Some of them sparked by lightning from these storms, some from summer grills that hurl sparks. And of course, we all think we can grab a fire extinguisher, but FEMA warned most of us don't know how to use them. Do you? ABC's Elizabeth Lee means I'm a consumer watchdog.
This woman is trying to put out a house fire, and she's losing. Lucky for her, this isn't her home. We told a group of homeowners we were doing a story about family fire drills, but it was a trick. Really, we wanted to see if they could work a fire extinguisher. Firefighters say many homeowners
Okay, so I see we had a few giggles there at the point where the woman said, what did you learn? Just get out. But that is the reality of it, folks, is that more times than not, we probably are going to want to get out. Okay, because how many of us can say without a doubt that we wouldn't be the first woman who struggled for 10 minutes just trying to get the pin out? Okay, and the woman who thought she was close enough, but she wasn't 8 feet from the fire, she was 12 feet. So ultimately, while her pass method, pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep was effective, her distance negated all of that. Okay? Now, what's the one thing that they all had in common? They were caught off guard. So it's one thing to think, oh, I can use a fire extinguisher, but the minute that lady said fire and handed her a fire extinguisher, you can see the panic in her face. Okay? But these are people that said unequivocally, I know how to use a fire extinguisher. But when you turn around and your couch is on fire, it's a whole different story. Okay? You see the difficulties. We talked about the teamwork method. Okay, look at the challenge that the husband and the wife had. He was more stressed out about, is my wife safe? Is she going to be okay? His focus wasn't on the fire. Okay, so again, you can think you know how to use it, but until you practice and you put yourself in front of that live fire and you understand what it feels like to have that heat coming back on you, it's really hard to say that I will know how to properly use a fire extinguisher. Okay, so let's talk quickly about the decision to use a fire extinguisher. First question, can I escape quickly and safely if I attempt to put out that fire and I don't succeed? The fire is now doubled in size. Can I still get out safely if in 60 seconds I haven't put out that fire? Well, yes, I can. Okay, so I'm going to give it my best shot. I'm going to attempt. But if I know that I cannot safely escape because there's fire over here, there's fire over here, even if I'm not sure, my choice is going to be no, and I'm going to leave. The next thing, knowing that we have the right type of fire extinguisher. So, the fire extinguisher they were using in the videos was about this size. That's not going to put out much of a fire, is it? In the very early stages, it might put out a fire in a wastebasket, but certain fires are going to require more capacity, more pressure, so you can put more chemical or more water on the fire in a shorter amount of time. So making sure that you have the right fire extinguisher. If there's a fire in your kitchen, am I going to grab a Class K extinguisher? Am I going to grab a Class D fire extinguisher? K. Very good. K. K. You got it. All right. Is the fire extinguisher big enough for the fire? Again, if we can't put out a fire in its early stages, get out. These fire extinguishers do not last very long. Full throttle, you may get on some extinguishers. This extinguisher, I believe you're going to get about 20 seconds of just full-blown chemicals coming out, addressing the fire. And after that, that's it, you're done. So if you can't put that fire out with that fire extinguisher, you may have been better off just not even trying. Okay? So making sure that you have a fire extinguisher that's big enough for the fire and that it is the right type of fire extinguisher. Is the area free from danger such as hazardous materials? Is this a kitchen in your fire in your kitchen? What do we keep under our kitchen that if it catches on fire is going to create a hazardous environment? Cleaning materials, silver polishing materials, okay? So is there a fire above me also? Am I at risk of the building being compromised and coming down on top of me, or even tiles coming down? Did this fire happen as a result of an earthquake and now the building is unstable around me? Okay, these are all things that we need to consider. And then we have 5 seconds to put out that fire. If you have not put out that fire, I don't care if your fire extinguisher is still half full or not. If you don't put out that fire in 5 seconds, get out. Because again, how long does it take a fire to double in size? 1 minute. Okay? And then, if we were able to put out the fire, we do our cool, soak, and separate. Okay? We stay and overhaul the fire, and the firemen will be as proud of you for doing that as putting out the fire. Okay, so they touched on briefly the pass method. Not the Banning pass, not the Beaumont pass. This is a fire extinguisher pass. It's very simple. 4 steps. We pull the pin. Great. We aim at the fire. We squeeze the handle, and we sweep. Now, I don't know if any of you noticed on there that there were a few folks that were up and down. It's not doing us any good. The base of the fire is where the fire is. Okay? Pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep at the bottom of the fire. The up and downs, and you think, oh, it's up on the roof. This is where the fire is. Okay? So we always want to focus that sweeping side to side at the base of the fire. Okay, we're almost wrapped up. We talked about this earlier. Baking soda, swimming pool or spa water and buckets, sand or dirt and shovels. How many of you in your life, either yourself or someone else, you were camping, you were out doing something, and a fire started and you ended up putting it out just by kicking dirt on it? Okay, it's probably a more common fire suppression mechanism than any of us ever using a fire extinguisher, throwing a blanket on something. Okay, now that doesn't mean that sofa that was burning, is it going to do us any good to throw a blanket on top of that? No, it's not. But if it were a small wastebasket that hasn't fully engulfed, absolutely, we can suffocate that fire. The type of blanket, is it just a small quilt, or is it a big moving blanket that is really going to provide the limited air that you need? So, again, hey, great, get creative, but when you're getting creative, especially in the area of blankets and trying to suffocate a fire, make sure you're not just throwing more fuel on the fire. Okay? Okay, are there any questions? I know we covered a lot today. I know a lot of it probably still doesn't seem to make sense, but as I said, I am going to continue to advocate for Sun Lakes to be able to have live active fire training using a fire pan in a controlled environment, because the reality of it is we can sit here, it's like I can tell you how to ride a bike 100 times, but I can show you better than I can tell you. And so for what it's worth to all of you, I would highly encourage, I'm not going to tell you to go buy a weapon like the police department. What I'm going to tell you to do is advocate for the right to be able to have live fire training here, because I can get you all the way to the line in understanding, but until you hold that fire extinguisher and you realize that, well, Chris, this is probably not the fire extinguisher I'm going to buy because it weighs as much as I do. This is not going to be the one because I just don't feel comfortable with it. But after using several fire extinguishers, you know what? This is my choice. A small 5-pound instead of a 10-pound ABC that has a hose that I'm more familiar with. But you will not get that true understanding of what your capabilities are until you've had a chance to actually use those fire extinguishers. So don't start any fires and say, oh, look, now we need fire training. Just advocate that this is something that you need. Yes, ma'am.
Is there any place we can go to take a class on how to use them?
Well, yes. I mean, people like me, like if, for example, if I were coming here to do fire safety training for staff, that could be piggybacked. The problem is that most of this type of real life fire training, it's done by CERT teams, community emergency response teams, which Sun Lakes in the past has had a very robust program. I understand that it's not at that level now, but fire departments don't come out and do this. It's not their forte. They'll come for a CERT training or what have you, but then again, you're lucky because you have a friend that is my friend, and I am committed to, when you guys are ready, willing, and able to do live fire training, I'll be right back here out in the parking lot, and you can come through, and in a matter of 10 or 15 minutes, you will have had a chance to practice on a live fire, get that level of comfortability that you want. And yes, there's a lot of questions about, liability and things of that nature. There's nothing more dangerous about practicing fire extinguisher than there is you getting in your car and driving to Albertsons. There's really not. It's a controlled environment, gives you the ability to figure out where you are on the realm of fire safety. And the reality of it is, after training, half of you may just decide, you know what, I'm with the get out. I am. But because, hey, like the police officer said, life before property. That's what it comes down to, okay? So hopefully today you've at least, I've tickled you enough to want to understand. Great, I get it, Chris. I understand the fire types. I understand the types of extinguishers. But challenge yourself to take that next step and, look around and find out. There's companies that are always doing fire safety training for their employees. Maybe you can piggyback on that, and they'll extend outreach, community outreach, and allow, 25 people from Sun Lakes to participate. But do try to find it if you can. And worst case scenario, if it can't be done here, let's set it up at a park somewhere.
I have a question.
Yes.
How many of you right now would be interested in having a live? Okay. That's my answer. Okay, so what I have to do is I do have to go to the master board. It does have to be approved, and our liability, of course, the insurance. So we'll figure something out. I'll get with the master board. I happen to have an in. So we'll see what we can do with that. And we will have Chris back to do a live training out in the parking lot. But again, that has to be something that is approved by the master board.
Chris, about I don't know what your idea is for suggesting fire extinguishers, but I have one in every bedroom because that's where I'm going to be at night when the when the fire starts. So it does no good to put it in the kitchen or in the garage or anything like that because I may not be able to get to the garage or to the kitchen. So I have one in every bedroom, because I may not even be able to get down to the hall, but I might be able to get from bedroom to bedroom to get out.
And that's a wonderful point. We all think that, okay, well, here, I've got it where they say, right by the kitchen. What if you can't get to the kitchen? Okay, so there's absolutely no reason not. Now, again, it comes down to the investment you want to make, the cost of, I know a lot of the Home Depot, Lowe's, they sell like packs where you can get an ABC extinguisher or maybe 3 with a K-class for your kitchen. Use the internet, Amazon. You don't have to pay retail prices for these types of extinguishers. There are many great deals online. You're going to get the same thing off Amazon as you would from Walmart or another grocery chain outlet, Walmart, Home Depot. So, but that's a great point, is more than one fire extinguisher is great. But again, knowing whether you can use that fire extinguisher or whether or not you understand that you're going to need to tell somebody, there's my fire extinguisher because I'm getting out.
Okay, Chris, thank you. I appreciate your coming out here and giving us, and hopefully we'll have you back to do the real hands-on. So the only last thing I want to do is I just want to let you know that we are going to be having our next presentation. Sorry, I didn't have this ready. I think some of you, I think Bob gave some of you the flyer. It is homeless awareness. We're going to have a panel of experts here to present the multifaceted challenges of homelessness. we're going to have the Homeless to Work program from Supervisor Gutierrez. His office is coming in. Opportunity Village, Jeffrey Platt, he's going to be one of the panels. We'll have the Banning Police Department Homeless Liaison, a mental health worker, Faith in Action, and also our own Securitas. So it's going to be very informative, very informational, and you'll be able to ask questions to the panel. The panel this time will be sitting up here, and we'll have the microphones going around, and you'll be able to ask all the questions that you want to ask. So that is going to be on Tuesday, July 11th. It's from 1 to 3 here in the main ballroom. So thank you for participating in today's presentation, and have a good afternoon.